folks, welcome everybody back to another episode of Pirkei Avos, live with Rabbi Chaim Coffman all the way in Israel. I so appreciate this class more than many because for me, ethics is where it's at. If you don't get the base ethics of why you're performing what you're performing, it doesn't make any sense. And the ethics of the fathers that Rabbi Chaim is sharing, it's just one of those things that we need to integrate. And I think nobody can go wrong listening to it. So without any delay, I'm going to just turn it over to Rabbi Coffman. Rabbi Coffman, how you doing today? We got a much better connection than last week. I see you had somebody come in. It's looking good.
All right. Hopefully, you know what they say. If I, I could blow up my own system, other people's systems, it's kind of, kind of the way it goes. One thing actually, just, I guess, the way of introduction, one thing you mentioned is about having the base, and the base of what we do is everything. A lot of times I'll say in my classes that you have to know what to do, right? So we have to know like what blessings to make and what you're allowed to do, not allowed to do on the Sabbath and this and that. But even more important than the details is understanding what's behind it. Because when you understand what's behind it, right, even when you're going through difficult times or whatever, okay, at least I understand what's going on. I see the bigger picture. The problem is people don't see the bigger picture. They get caught up, certainly, in the details. And again, I think it's, in some ways more important, knowing the bigger picture than actually getting lost, in the details, but you need the details. You certainly need the details as well. So we are in chapter 1, Mishnah 13. See how far we get with this. He used to say, he who seeks renown loses his reputation. Mm-hmm. Right? In other words, person wants to be famous, right? He's going to lose that reputation because we're not running after honor, right? If someone runs after honor, right, it's going to go away from him. We'll see. He doesn't increase his Torah learning, he decreases it. In other words, if he thinks he's God's gift to the world, right, a major egoist, right, and he, he thinks, as we mentioned, he's God's gift to the world, so what happens? Not only is he's not going to get that reputation, but he's not going to want to learn Torah either because he's too busy listening to his clippings, right, to his billing, to people telling him how great he is or whatever, right? He refuses to teach Torah. Let's say someone had the ability to teach. They don't teach Torah. They deserve death, right? We'll have to see why the punishment is so severe. And he who exploits the crown of Torah shall fade away. You have to see exactly what that means. The crown of Torah is not that easy. It's definitely not easy to achieve, even by people sit and learn the vast majority, of their time, of their days, of their life. It's something that's, certainly not easy to grab. So let's start from the beginning. He who seeks renown, right, wants to be famous, going to lose his reputation. So the question is, okay, right, what does that mean? So it means he wants to have his name known from afar. He wants people in the middle of nowhere to say, oh, this person, I know this person, or I heard of this person, and he's done this, he's done that, he's famous, so to speak. And what's going to happen? He's going to listen to his own clippings, his own billing, and he's going to have, he's going to want to run other people's lives. He's going to want to be lordly. That's the word. And when he does that, and he wants to have this power, right, it's going to dissipate, right? Because the idea is that someone who strives after that, somebody who wants that, so some of the commentaries say it buries his master. In other words, you want to grab hold of it. You want that fame, right? You want that fame. You want everyone to know who you are. But at the end of the day, you're not going to get it, right? You're not going to get it because, again, it's all about ego. And even if a person does have it for a certain amount of time, he's not going to have it for long, right? He's certainly gonna lose it. So the language here is of haughtiness, what we call gaiva. Gaiva says the ways of the righteous, brings down to the first gate. It's a book steeped in ethics, and he speaks about different things we have to work on, like anger, gaiva. these other type of bad character traits. But he says gaiva, we mentioned this before, but all good things remain, should be repeated. And that is, he says, that someone who has gaiva, someone who's haughty, somebody who's conceited, he said that's the base of all bad character traits. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have to have self-esteem. We live in a very weak generation, what I call the Teflon generation. God forbid someone gets a little bit rebuked. That's it. They can't handle it. And, they go off. They think they're, God's gift to the world or whatever. They're, God forbid, anyone should tell them that they do something wrong. There was a story, 13-year-old kid learning in yeshiva, and the spiritual mentor in the yeshiva, was trying to give him direction, and this 13-year-old punk says, Rabbi, that's very good. I have a different philosophy of life. I have a different way of looking at things. And this rabbi looked at him and he's like, yeah, you're too young for that. You're too young to have, to have a way of life. You're only 13, 14, right? So even though we have to have self-esteem, right? 100% we have to have self-esteem, but there's certainly a fine line between having self-esteem, a little bit of self-esteem, and having a chip on your shoulder. I had a great rabbi once say that there's a very serious problem in this generation of people lack of self-esteem. So he's saying how we have to build them up, we have to tell them how great they are and whatever. So I asked him, I said, I don't understand, but I said, if you do that, they're going to have gaiva. They're going to be conceited. He said, don't worry, I can deal with that also. He's like, that should be the worst problem, that someone thinks like they actually, they know too much. Today, again, people's egos are very fragile. And, we're living in a very weak generation. So you have to have a certain chip on your shoulder, right? You have to have that self-esteem, right? Self-esteem and being conceited are two totally different, two totally different things, right? So over here, and then when we speak about gaiva, that this person wants his renown, he wants his fame, right? He wants his reputation, right? So some explain that he wants people to know how great he is without them even opening their mouth. In other words, he doesn't have to say anything. He doesn't have to go live on Facebook, YouTube, whatever. Everybody already knows who he is, right? Or she is, right? And he's already got that fame. He's got that, he's got that charisma. People are going to want to follow him anyway, right? He doesn't have to go out and do anything, right? So the punishment, though, for trying to do that is the fact that they're going to lose that power and they're going to lose that great name. Because even if someone has a great name, right? You think of a professional athlete, right? Someone who has a great name, how long do they have a great name after they've already finished playing? Right? Probably not so much. They do some endorsements, they do some charity events, this and that. They keep their face, visible or whatever. But in general, once they're in it, they have that fame, it's one thing. But usually that fame is going to dissipate. By some people, the fame still stays. The nostalgia is still there, right? But here, what do the rabbis tell you? Rabbis tell you that someone who's going to run after honor, right? That's his desire. People should know who he is. Look how great he is. Look at how deep thoughts he can give over in a very simplistic way, so people can understand, and charismatic and all that. And he wants people to honor them, right? What's going to happen? Just the opposite. Honor is going to flee from them, right? In other words, if you desire, if a person has that desire, now we all, everyone has a little bit of ego, certainly in them, right? But at the same time, you're not looking, like Haman did in the book of Esther, you're not looking for people when you walk in a room to fall on the floor and bow down. I mean, maybe some people, but most people, most people are not interested, in that. But when someone gets a little bit of honor, right? A little bit of honor when, at the end of a person's life, right? They can't do the same things, right? They don't have the same desires because the body doesn't allow them, right? So what do they fight after? What do they fight after? Honor, right? Honor is something that penetrates throughout all generations. When you're younger, when you're older, but when you're older and you can't get anything else, right? Because, obviously in the secular world, the older you are, you're useless. You're useless to society. We say just the opposite. The older you are, the link in the chain, you go back to Mount Sinai, right? The problem is, by the younger generation, the older you are, the closer you go back to being a monkey, right? Because everyone, in academia, except in the religious world, hold of evolution. Right, there's a famous story of Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, Zeicher Tzadik Livracha, one of the great rabbis of the last generation in America, and he was on a plane, and his grandkids were serving him left and right. It's like, Zaidi, Grandpa, can I get you this? Can I get you that? Can I get you the other thing? And there was, somebody sitting next to him, and he says, how do you get your grandkids to serve you like that? He says, anytime my grandkids, I have a connection with them, it's either about money or about birthdays or taking them out or whatever. So Rabbi Kamenetsky explained, he said, see, they look at me as a link in a chain going back to Mount Sinai, right? So the closer you are to Mount Sinai, we don't say, oh, look, the Rambam was medieval. What did the Rambam know? We have much more technology than he had, right? We're much greater than the Rambam. Yeah, the Rambam was a doctor, remember. He served the Sultan, and the Rambam was able to understand the value of plants and what medicinal properties they had in order to cure people. If you ask a doctor today, right, you go to an appointment and say, okay, you have this, you have that, take this and take that. Now, if you ask them why, they'll throw you out. They're not interested in having it. It's like you're questioning their authority. They'll say, it works. It doesn't matter what it does. I'm just telling you it works. Forget about the side effects or whatever, right? But the Rambam understood the medicinal properties of plants, was able to prescribe, these things to heal people. I mean, he wrote a whole thing on, figuring out the new moon, to the exact percentages of when the new moon would come and when the moon was half and, different things. He didn't have supercomputers. Right, didn't even have an abacus. Right, he's medieval. What does he know? Yeah, when you can fathom, who the Rambam was, right? You get back to me. So Kamenetsky said they look at me like a link in a chain, right? So I'm the link in a chain goes back to Mount Sinai. If I'm the link in the chain that goes back to Mount Sinai, they have respect for the elder generation. What the Greeks, the Romans do to the elder generation. When they were getting older, they would say, Mom, Dad, it's been real. Take them to a mountain. They say, see ya, sayonara. So this rabbi said, this other person, he says, they look at me like a link in the chain. They look at you like a monkey, right? Because obviously, you hold of evolution. So the further you go back, meaning you're a link in that chain of being a monkey, right? So they treat you like a monkey. Right, so over here, anyone who's going to run after honor, right? We're not interested in honor. If a person, we're going to see later that the Mishnah says that a person who learns, right? He learned a lot of Torah and he's wise. He shouldn't think he's so great because that's what he's created to do, right? So therefore, you're going to say, oh look, I learned this, I learned that, I went through the entire Talmud. Right, I learned Kabbalah. I know that. Look at all the knowledge. Like it's a drop in the bucket. It's a drop in the bucket, to essentially what we know, because the more we uncover, and I'm sure you can tell many things about this, the more that we uncover, the more we realize we don't know. Right? They always say, we're an infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust. Right? You live in a town, in a city, in a state, in a country, on a planet, we're getting smaller. In a galaxy, we're getting smaller. And we think we're God's gift to the world. Man is created after animals, right? So therefore, if we do what we're supposed to do, the only difference between us and animals is what? We have a spiritual soul. The Aramaic translation on that God breathed in the spirit of life. He gave us the ability to speak. Animals also have the ability to speak, but he gave us the ability to reason, to make decisions. And if we make the wrong decisions, then we're no different than an animal. Then we're worse than an animal because we all have the animalistic side, right? We all have that nefesh behemoth, right? That aspect of the soul, that's the animalistic soul. Jews and non-Jews have it. But at the end of the day, if we don't act according to our spiritual side, Jew or non-Jew, you're an animal, right? You are no different than an animal. Now, if that's the case, doesn't matter how much knowledge you have.
Right.
How can you think you're so great? You're created, you bozo, you're created after animals. If you were so great, if you were the pinnacle of creation, wouldn't have God created you first? I would vouch to say, yeah, God would have created him first. Right? Oh, we got to say, but I need a light. We need the moon. We need other, whatever. But so you can learn out that man is the pinnacle of creation if we do what we're supposed to do, serving God. If we don't do what we're supposed to do, we give into our evil inclination. We're worse than animals. And God says, see, animals were created first. So how could you ever be gaivadig? How could you ever be conceited? Right? And think you're God's gift to the world you created after animals. Right? We do things like animals. Also, right? We'll give homework. Right? The homework assignment is, think about that when you're in the bathroom. Do we do what animals do? We do what animals do. Right? There's no question, but you say, come on. Okay, I have to do that. It's part of my bodily need. Fine. But aren't you doing what animals do? Doesn't matter what, at that point you can have a 250 IQ. Doesn't matter. As the old adage goes, when you got to go, you got to go. That's it. You're not in control. Right? And that's what we see by this whole virus, that the science community has been turned on its head. They're going to say, okay, got a social distance, got to do like, no, then you have to do like this. They keep turning and changing and this and that and all these other things with all their information, with all the technology. They're being made to look pretty dumb, right? I'm not saying they shouldn't try and figure out a cure, and all that. Science doesn't have all the answers, right? And this shows beyond the shadow of a doubt that God runs the world and then we're not in charge. Because you can't just flick a switch and say, okay, we're going to take care of it, right? We're in charge. We're going to shut this thing down. Yeah, well, this little microbe has shut down the entire world. Right? The entire world overnight. And science has been scrambling. Right? The hospitals have been scrambling. Right? No question about it. So now, in the scientific community, that's where I would say a lot of the conceitedness is, because they think they're in charge. And they think they have the power. And by thinking they have the power, God says, I don't think so. Right? I think that I told this story before. It's a good story to repeat. There was somebody goes to the doctor, specialist, daughter's very sick, and specialist says, yeah, look at the x-rays, I can certainly help you. And the man's great. He says, Bezrat Hashem, with the help of God. And the secular Israeli says, what do you mean the help of God? God has nothing to do with this. I'm the one doing the surgery. And this man says, you take that back. He says, I'm not going to take that back. I mean, whatever. They go bantering back and forth. So that the father says, I'm not going to let you operate on my daughter until you take that back. This guy's laughing. This guy says, listen, if you don't have your daughter be operated by me, your daughter's going to die. Right? And this guy turned to him and he said, you don't run the world. There's a God that runs the world. And he left. And this doctor's thinking like, okay, she's going to die. Right? According to nature, nothing to talk about. Right? So whatever, went on with his life. And he was giving a seminar, right, to 200 doctors, 300 doctors, and in the middle of his presentation, imagine in the middle of his presentation, what they say, you got to go and you got to go, right? And he left in embarrassment. He had to stop the presentation. So like a week later, he calls this man. He said, that's where I have to speak to you. And the man comes in and he says, I'm willing to operate on your daughter. He said, I'm really sorry. You're right. With God's help, with God's help. And this guy says, what do you mean with God's help? Like all of a sudden you change your tune? Like, what do you mean? So he told him this story. And he said, I was giving a presentation in front of all these people, in front of all my colleagues. And I couldn't even control one bowel movement. Right? He said, here I am thinking I'm this hotshot doctor and I'm giving this presentation and I run the world. Right? I can't even control that. He says, So he says, I'll be more than happy to the operation with God's help, because he understood he's not in control, but God had to make a point, right? In other words, someone who's got that much, ego, and is so so conceited, I can do this and I can do that and whatever. God says, okay, let's see. I'm gonna build him, and then bam, I'm gonna smash him, right, and show him that he's not in control. So now the next part of the Mishnah says that if he seeks to have this reputation, not only is he going to lose his reputation, he's not going to increase his Torah learning, he's going to decrease it. Right? Now over here, what's going to be? Right? What's going to be over here? He says that someone who doesn't increase their learning, if they don't learn on a consistent basis, they don't review, what is going to happen? What's going to happen is you will forget. You will forget Torah. In other words, if a person goes a day without learning Torah, it's like he takes 2 steps backwards. In order to get where he's supposed to get the next day, it's like you got to learn double, but you don't make up for it. Right? It's a mistake. You got to be, consistent. A person will say, well, I'll make it up later. Right? The problem is, let's say you were supposed to learn, X amount. You don't learn today. You don't learn the day after, or you only learned a little bit or whatever. It's like digging a pit, right? It's totally like digging a pit. So therefore, if you don't increase the learning, right, you're certainly going to end up forgetting, right? Because Torah is not something that's easily remembered, right? As we mentioned earlier, there are a lot of details. So you constantly have to review. The Rabbi Chaim, in his epic work, the Mishnah Brewer, when speaking about all the all the laws that a Jew has to do, let's say getting up in the morning to prayer, to the laws of Shabbos, the laws of festivals. In his book, in his commentary on the laws of Shabbos, he says in his introduction, there are a lot of details in the laws of Shabbos, many, many details. And the Rabbi Chaim said, if you don't review, you will transgress, because this is something that comes up every week. Right? So like anything else, you want to be proficient, you have to continually review. Right? If you don't review, you'll make mistakes. Right? I think that's pretty clear. Now, another explanation over here is that if a person doesn't increase their learning, they are going to die early. Now, that seems a little bit extreme. Right? What does that mean? The issue here is that this guy thinks he's God's gift to the world, right? He's Mr. Conceited with a capital C. He says, why do I need to learn? I already know it all. It's beneath me to learn more. Because what could really be added? What could really be added to their learning, right? So I know of a certain quote unquote rabbi that was at a funeral, and someone came up to him innocently. Right? He said, "Oh, Rabbi, I see you don't have your book." He said, "Here, you can take mine." And this rabbi looked at him. I don't know if he thought he was making fun of him or whatever the story was. He looked over to him, nose high in the air, and he says, "Young man, I don't need your book. I write books." Right? He's a published author. That is true. But what does that tell you? That tells you he thinks he's God's gift to the world. What? I need your book? You don't think I know this without a book? Don't you know who I am? I write books. Yeah, that's ego with a capital E. Now again, these stories you're gonna say, come on, did it really happen? Am I exaggerating? No. Stuff like this you cannot make up. Yeah, question.
Well, Rabbi, I just want to ask, how does this work when we're being directly pressured or challenged, let's say, tested, if you will, by someone else? Just having freedom of the will. I mean, I've had headbutts with enough people in my life, and I've been deemed arrogant by many, but more so, a lot of people realize or have told me that I go out of my way to help people. And so, you try to keep being you, but I've butted heads with some people that just wanted to correct, go out of their way to correct. And I find that it is not always kind or warranted. And I'm not afraid, especially the older I get. When I was younger, I let it happen to the point where I would just let people correct. And then all of a sudden I find myself, setting a precedence in a relationship where they're talking down to me endlessly. And I can't live in that. I can't live in that.
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm talking about my spouse or something, that's one thing. I mean, my spouse, if she says something that's corrective, I give her, extra room in my heart and my head, and I try to think, okay, maybe I could have done this different or better. Maybe I could have done that better. And to deal with what you're saying about the Mishnah, one who doesn't add to their knowledge or even Torah knowledge, dies before his time. They bring hardships. I get that. But when, I see more and more that some people, like you started off with the Mishnah about those who want to think their reputation is more, they always have a terrible tendency to talk down to others. And this Mishnah's got this dichotomy action going on where it's got an answer before the second part in there. And
there's another Mishnah that says you have to know your place.
Right.
Right, we're going to speak about that also. In other words, a person, let's say, can get rabbinic supervision, right? Sorry, he can get rabbinic ordination. Rabbinic ordination is not the same as it was in time of the Talmud. Here, a person, let's say, learned the laws of Shabbos, or the laws of kashrus, or whatever, took an exam and very good. Does that mean he knows everything? No. Right? It doesn't mean that. It means that you have to know when you have a question, and if you don't know the answer, you have to go to someone who does, right? At the same time, I will tell you, get a little bit, personal here, right? Since I've been younger, I've always been talked down to by people, family members, whatever, and no one's ever going to listen, right? The worst thing I will tell you, because of one of my personal pet peeves, and that is that someone talks down to you like they're authoritative. Now, if they are authoritative, it's still wrong, right? But they talk to you like they know everything. How many times have I seen people quote things or say things, and they're coming out of left field, right? And they say, but I saw this and this is that, but it's not. It's wrong. Your way of thought is wrong, because that's not how we hold. That's not what we do, right? But people come along with a small bit of knowledge, right? They go to Rabbi Dr. Google and say, oh, look, Google said it, right? This must be true, but they're lacking a perspective. They're lacking knowledge, and they make assumptions. Right now, you know what happens when you make assumptions. We won't go down that path. But when you make assumptions and it's not based on fact, right, then what's going to be? You're going to make mistakes. You're going to make serious mistakes. So the thing is, and I'm sure you've seen this also, the one thing people want to say, oh, I think this, and, you have to work on that, and you should do this, and it could be where, we all have what to work on. It could be someone gave rebuke and they were too harsh. Someone said something and, they shouldn't have said it or whatever. Nobody likes getting rebuked, right? No, definitely. And if a person did something wrong, they have to admit they've done something wrong. But you see, the other person's like Teflon, and you can't say anything. There's hopefully I'm going to speak about it this week. There's been a whole controversy in New York, right? There was a funeral, by ultra-Orthodox Jews, and supposedly, just hit, both sides for 1 second, they had this funeral. Now, obviously, you're not supposed to have big funerals or whatever, but they coordinated it with the police, right? That's their side. They coordinated it with the police, and the police reneged as it's going on and came back and made this whole thing and broke it up. Now, what the police are saying is they did it on their own. Right? They did it on their own, and they had to break it up and all this. Now we're being made to look very bad, the ultra-Orthodox community, because they're saying, look, they're not going according to protocol. Now they're saying we went according to protocol. You guys just changed the protocol. The last minute.
Move the goalpost.
Now, I would say, if what the ultra-Orthodox Jews are saying is not true, and they didn't go through proper protocol, they're liable. right? They 100% are liable, nothing to talk about. If what they say, though, is true, they have been maligned by the mayor of New York and maligned all Orthodox Jews, which we would call basically being a racist. Now, if he said that to blacks or Muslims, if let's say he said it to Muslims, New York City would be trashed. Trashed. Nothing to talk. It says about Jews, it's okay. Right? So something like that. Again, I'm going to hit more detail this week probably, right, in a few different avenues. But the idea is that if it's done according to the way it should be done and they renege, why is that our fault? Why does that make us look bad? You agreed. If they didn't agree, okay, then we're at fault. It's probably somewhere in the middle, right? Probably somewhere in the middle. But if they had the right to do it, and then the police said, okay, we're taking over, and they do it as a last second thing when the thing is going on,
change your opinion, change your
mind. So okay, I'm not looking into all the details. Who said what and what? I'm just saying in general. If one side reneged, that's not our fault. Maybe they shouldn't have done it anyway, just to be sensitive. Just have a very small funeral and just be sensitive to what's going on. That could be also, right? But if they got permission, there are people frolicking on the beaches. Nobody says anything. Someone told me in New Jersey, they were down in New Jersey last week. I heard this firsthand. They were down in New Jersey as a block party. No social distancing, no masks. Right? 20 people there, 30 people there. Where's the outrage? Where's the outrage of the pictures of people on the beach? No. You want to pick on Orthodox Jews by having a funeral because they're a scapegoat? Come on. It doesn't work that way. It shouldn't work that way. But in these circumstances, it could be we have to be more sensitive. Even if you want to do it, you have permission. Maybe it's not the best thing to do. Even for the honor of the one who died. Could be. I'm not, they didn't come to ask me the question. Right? I'm not saying either way. I'm just saying if they did it without protocol, it's wrong. They went against it. If the other side reneged, it's something totally different. But let's call it on an equal setting. Where's the condemnation of secular people? Right? Secular people out there at the beach. Out there in public gatherings, not 2 meters apart. Not with masks on. Anyone say anything about that? No, they're just complaining. Too many people are getting sick and dying. Well, there's a reason. There's a reason, you have this. So the problem is, as I was saying, in your case, nobody likes to get rebuked, right? If a person's going to rebuke someone, you have to know how to do it. And even so, people don't want to hear it. People don't want to hear they do anything wrong. They'll be first to criticize you, right? They'll be first to, and I've had this, many times. People will say, oh, this Orthodox community did this, and this one did that, and what do? They label me as part of it. So I said, but I'm not doing that. A lot of people in my community not doing that. Okay, so some people doing things wrong. That's their issue, but it makes us look bad. And when you label everyone together, you're a racist. Yeah.
Rabbi, I just want you to know we have a guest online who's in New York, and they said the Haredim had the funeral, and they were wearing masks, and they were 6 feet apart, and yet the people were still angry.
Right. Because whatever, again, if they're doing according to protocol, and what exactly they said should, the police agreed. Why are they getting maligned? Why in the world are they getting maligned if they had permission? Now, again, it could be, maybe there should be a little extra sensitivity, whatever. Listen, in places I see people wearing masks, but they're not wearing it over their face. They're wearing it down below their nose. It doesn't help. So, not everyone's following the protocol. I understand. But at the same time, to call out an entire community, you would never get away with that with any other community. I mean, if you did it with the blacks or the Muslims, it'd be outrage. Al Sharpton would be like going bananas in New York, right? He would be absolutely nuts. Whatever. They trash the place. So over here, we don't like to be talked down to, even if we're, certainly, when we're younger, the person senses that it's like, oh, I know better. I definitely know better. Do as I say, not as I do. But they don't even give you the opportunity for your opinion. So if you're younger, I understand. If a person's younger, they're not going to respect your opinion, right? Especially if you're the youngest. Could be 30 years later. It doesn't matter. Still won't, respect your opinion. But they'll be the first to give their opinion, and they could be way off. They could be 100% way off. And you explain something, it's like, oh, you're a fanatic, right? How many times have people told me this? Oh, you're a fanatic. I'm like, just answer the question. Is this true or it's not true? But see, if they have to admit it's true, then they have to admit what they're doing is wrong, right? So they just put you down. So they'll look down, oh, you're a fanatic. Oh, this community is this. Oh, that is that. But they'll look down and say, oh, I'm so much better, right? And they'll use an example. They, oh, look, there was this Orthodox Jew committed fraud, right? He did this, cheated on his taxes, whatever. I don't do that, right? Someone tell me this, right? Not exactly this case. He said, oh, this person did this. I didn't do that. So since I didn't do that, and I'm not an Orthodox Jew, so I don't have to keep anything. Well, what does that have to do with anything? Right, we're going to see in the next Mishnah. God's not going to ask you why you weren't like such a person, like so-and-so. He's going to ask you, why didn't you do what you are obligated to do? He goes, well, I don't have to be Rabbi Chaim Coffman. You're right, you don't. I think God is very happy there's one of me in the world. You have to be whatever your potential is. God sent a message with every single person with their soul, but nobody knows what it is. We forget it. We don't have any contact with that. But you have to reach whatever potential you have. Right? Lo alechem lecha ligmor. There's a lot of work to do. But God's not going to ask you, how come you weren't like this great rabbi if you didn't have the soul capability? Right? You have to be who you're supposed to be, not compared to someone else. Right? So a person's going to get upstairs and, God's going to say, well, did you learn Torah? Were you honest in business? It's like, well, how can I didn't learn anything about Torah or whatever. But look at all these other people. Look at all these Orthodox Jews got caught for this, got caught for that, who cares? God's going to say, if I was playing God, this is what he would say. He would say, what do I care what they did? I don't care. That's a different issue. The source of your soul should have done this. And it should have done that. But you didn't. You have to answer for yourself, not compared to what someone else does. Right? And you can't use that as an excuse. Right? Someone said, I saw an Orthodox Jew in a casino. Don't you hold that's forbidden to go to a casino? I said, yeah. They said, what were they doing in a casino? I said, probably having a great time, gambling, losing money, enjoying the environment. They said, but how do you explain that? I said, what do you mean? He said, what was he doing in a casino if it was forbidden? I said, I told you, he's probably having a good time. So I said, there are people that are overweight. There are people that smoke. There are people who do other things that are wrong. I have to answer for why they do that? That's their problem. Oh, but they're supposed to hold according to Torah and mitzvahs. Doesn't mean we don't have an evil inclination. Everyone's got an evil inclination. If we all have an evil inclination, we have to answer for ourselves. Right? We have to say why we are sullying our souls. We're giving up, our portion of the world to come for a bowl of lentils, like an old Uncle Asav. Right? We're selling ourselves short. Why? For fun. Doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean we can't do tshuva. Doesn't mean we can't repent. Right? But at the same time, we make mistakes. Are we held to a higher pedestal? Yes. Should we? Yes. Okay. We don't always reach what we're supposed to do. Doesn't mean we don't have an obligation to do it. It doesn't mean I can say, well, this person's not doing it, so I'm okay. What do I have to do with anything? That is not a valid, if you're going to argue, that's not a valid argument. It doesn't matter what this person does. If they go against the Torah, they're supposed to keep it, and they make mistakes, okay, they have to answer. Doesn't mean it's right. No one's going to say it's right. But you cannot then say, wow, if I don't do it, I'm okay. There's no comparison. And again, if I wouldn't hear such ludicrous things. You never believe someone can make such an argument. But they're making it, why are they making that argument? They're making that argument to say, I don't have to do anything. And they'll make fun of you and say, hey, we're in a kosher restaurant. There's no problem with trichinosis. Well, that's not why we keep kosher. It has nothing to do with heating things up, so we don't get tapeworms, right? But in the meantime, I said to this person, you're eating a bagel. What does that have to do with anything? You're eating a bagel. They're like, whatever, pass the salt. That was it. That was it. There's nobody home. But what are they going to do? They're going to make fun of you and drag you down in order to make themselves look better, to say, I don't have to keep anything, right? And I have a very hard time, as you can see, dealing with these type of people that open their mouth. They think they're God's gift to the world. They have all the answers, but they don't know anything. They don't know anything, right? And they're going to claim to you the Torah says this, the Torah, this, that. They can't read Hebrew, never read the book cover to cover, never saw the movie. They don't know anything, but they'll talk to you like they're authoritative, right? And to me, I don't have patience for that. If you want to argue, you would never argue with a PhD in physics and say, hey, I read this article on Wikipedia. I'm going to knock off Stephen Hawking. Going to knock him off. Never happened. Never happened. That's called the ultimate in being conceited. You're going to knock off the greatest physicist of this century. Okay, he might have been a great apicor, a heretic also. But you're going to knock off his physics because you read an article on Wikipedia or something in the New York Times. Come on. You'd never get it. That's not being intellectually honest, right? And most people are not intellectually honest. And if someone admits that, I don't have an issue. Just admit it. If you're not going to admit it, I'm going to hammer you, because you can't bring a proof out of nowhere and just say, that's what I think. But it's not backed up by anything.
Yeah,
how did you say that? I'm going to knock off Stephen Hawking. No more books. Take a brief history at a time. Burn it. That makes sense. So this is what Gaiva can do, right? This is what being conceited. They look down on people. They say, "Oh, you think you know? I have a PhD. I have a PhD in Judaism. You want to argue with that? I mean, you could. There are plenty of things I don't know. I'm certainly going to admit what I don't know. But for goodness sakes, you never learned anything. You don't have a degree. You don't even have an undergraduate degree. You're in kindergarten. You're arguing with a PhD in that field. I don't have tolerance. I just don't have tolerance, for that. Maybe I should be more open-minded until my brain's fall on the floor. But that's the ultimate being conceited. You don't know anything. How can you argue? Because they want to argue and put you down and make themselves look better in order to say what I do is okay. And that's not okay. That's not okay to do. It's one thing you think you're God's gift to the world. You look down on someone. Why? Because you do. Forget about knowledge. Forget about other things. Because you just think you're better than them. You're older than them. Whatever. You just think you're better. And there are people like that. That no matter what you say, if a person's a younger brother, your older siblings will never listen to you. You could be 70 years old. Never going to change. That's the way they look at you. They, like a little kid. But I say, wait a minute, but I have all this knowledge. Now we're not interested. You don't probably know anything. You've been brainwashed. Okay. You're in a cult. You know what a cult is? It doesn't matter. It's like whatever you say doesn't matter. Okay. If you hear that enough times, you just turn out. You just, and it's a hard thing, because you want to help people, you want to bring people back, and they just put you down. They just knock you down and look down at you. It's like, oh, you're this, you're that. Very interesting you said that. Let's have a discussion. Nah, I wouldn't do that. I'm not that open-minded. That's what it is. Right? That's, they'll say, oh, I know, and they'll talk authoritative, and, what do they really know? Now, also over here, we're talking about if it's beneath this person to learn. Right? They could be an MBA, PhD, whatever, but they don't want to learn. They don't want to learn. Now the problem over here is why does the Mishnah over here say? See it here. The Mishnah says that he's not going to increase his learning; he's going to decrease it. Right? Now over here, over here could mean that even if a person learns, but their mind's not there, right? In other words, they're learning for ulterior motives. They're learning maybe just for knowledge or whatever, but because they're conceited, because they think they're God's gift to the world, what does their learning do? Their learning is skewed, extremely skewed, right? So and what are they afraid of? What are they afraid of? Anyone who calls them on it, right? God forbid you call someone a fraud who's really a fraud, right? Well, what do they do? What do they do? They're going to get exposed. And they don't want to be seen as something that they're not, right? So what's the punishment? Somebody like that, says the Mishnah over here, they die, right? They can die before their time. Because the purpose of living is to learn, and it's to continue to learn. If it's to continue to learn, it means it has to be with truth, right? It can't be just because I want to put other people down. They're people with tremendous Torah knowledge, but never worked on character traits. So what is it? So they're over intellectual students, as Rabbi Moshe Schneider, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, would say, right? My Rebbe's Rebbe would say, do not become a ultra-Orthodox student. Torah is not like mathematics. It's not like English. Torah is supposed to change a person. Now, does that mean we're perfect? Doesn't mean we're perfect, right? By any stretch. But the only way a person's going to reach any level of perfection whatsoever, right? Certainly by learning Muslim, by learning Torah. Now, damn, the man's going to ask the $1 million question. What about the Noahides? What do we have to do? What's our obligation?
We still got to learn.
Oh, you still got to learn is learning Musar, ethics. That's what we're learning now. Is ethics forbidden for a non-Jew? No. Should a non-Jew want to be a better person? 100%. Right? So how's a non-Jew, right? Certainly he's not going to convert, right? How is a non-Jew going to be a better person if he doesn't learn Torah? Right? If he doesn't learn Musar, he's not going to get it anywhere else. Right? You go through the gates of repentance by Rabbeinu Yonah, the path of the just by the Ramchal, by Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, the ways of the righteous. These are classic Jewish works that get down to the nitty-gritty about wanting to change. Exactly. Being a vessel of change and wanting to work hard. Now, it's not easy. If you read Path of the Just, he's got a whole system how to get to Ruach HaKodesh. Ruach HaKodesh is the lowest form of prophecy, which is divine inspiration, right? And it tells you step by step how to get there. After like the first step and a half, you close the book. Very, very hard, right? It's very, very hard to get there. But regardless, it changes a person the way they think. If a person learns the laws, let's say, of Lashon Hara, now it doesn't apply to a non-Jew, but I'm not saying a non-Jew should do it. It's a moral imperative. Right, speaking against others and being a talebearer and all that doesn't necessarily apply to them, right? But I don't think it's a good thing for them to do in any case. That being the case, if they're aware of what it does, right? What it does to others, what it does to themselves, even if they're not obligated, isn't it a good thing? It's a moral imperative not to do. Where else are they going to learn that from? If you'd ask anybody that in the non-Jewish world, right, the secular Jewish world, about this, like, come on, everyone does it. It's the way of the world, right? It's a natural thing. Reuven speaks against Shimon. That's just, it's not going to affect him, even if it doesn't. Won't affect his business, won't affect, marriage prospects for his kids. Let's say that it's not going to affect him in that way, in a negative way, right? But for a Jew, why is it forbidden? Because you don't gain anything by this. It's not like, you stole from him. I have the money in my hand. Right? I killed him. God forbid. He's dead. Right? I got something in my hand. When you speak badly against someone else, what do you have in your hand? Nothing. You just have the satisfaction of putting somebody down in order to make yourself look better. That's not tangible. That is not something I have in my hand. You'll say, yeah, it makes me feel better, but it's not something tangible. Right? Now, so something like that for a non-Jew, out the window, doesn't apply. Right? Even if it's not tangible, but at the end of the day, the question we always have to ask is this good for me? or is it bad for me? Now, let's talk about cursing. Do most of the people in the world curse? Yes. Right? Probably a lot of people out there curse. What are the statistics? I don't know. But a lot of people curse. Now, let's say a person wanted to work on themselves, right? And like for 1 hour a day, whatever happens, they're not going to curse, right? So imagine they say, okay, 10 o'clock in the morning from 10 to 11 in the morning, this person says they're not going to curse. So they happen to be doing something outside, they're raking, they're hammering or whatever. Boom, right hammer, left thumb, right? What's the first thing you want to do when you scream? It's curse, right? Of course you want to curse. Now imagine for an hour a day, over time, a person during that time, whatever happens, is not going to curse, right? He's not going to curse. Imagine over time the sensitivity they have to that. So now, months later, they've been working on this, right hammer, left thumb, bam, right? So they're about to curse, they stop. They don't curse. Say, wow, what, so it's progress. Right? Tremendous amount of progress. So then you say to them, yeah, that is progress, 100%. But I have one fundamental question. Did you think any 4-letter words in your mind? They're going to say, come on, I'm human. I just stuck a hammer and smashed my thumb, finger, whatever. You say, come on, does God really expect a person to reach that level? Our thoughts control us, do they not? Thoughts are very powerful. Very, very powerful. So one level is, I'm going to have the sensitivity to not cursing. Again, if a person tries that, over time, I promise you hear someone cursing and say, ooh, this person's disgusting. This person's scum. Look how he speaks. But you weren't that much different, a few days before, a week before, a month before. But what's the difference? Difference is you now have sensitivity. When you hear people speaking badly against others, you have sensitivity. That sensitivity is a good thing. Doesn't mean you're going to be perfect. Doesn't mean you're not going to transgress. But now you understand what it's like to do and not to do. And when you understand that, you hear someone say, you're like, ew, this person is not that much different. But once you have that sensitivity, this is a very simple thing. I'm not talking nuclear physics here, right? We're talking a very, very simple thing. Not cursing, not speaking badly against others. Try it 20 minutes for a certain amount, a certain time during the day. No matter what happens, either you're not going to curse, you're not going to speak badly against others. Forget about knowing the laws or whatever. You're going to do the best of your ability not to do that during that time. Promise you, you'll be much more aware over time of what comes out of your mouth. Right? So the purpose of all this is that when you learn, you want to take what you learn, put it into practice. You want to make it something that is practical. Right? Not everything we learn is necessarily practical. When it comes to ethics, it's all very practical, but it's not easy to do. Right? Rabbi Yisrael Salanter once said the hardest thing to do is change one character trait. Change one character trait over a person's life. Now, we can work on certain things. Doesn't necessarily mean we have total power over that character trait. A person can work on anger for a long time, and think they have control over it until they're in a certain situation. They get in a certain situation, then bam, they just sort of react, without thinking about it, without winding down or whatever. They're, certainly today, I don't think there's any question, families stuck at home and you can't get out and kids can't go to school and there's no structure. Everyone will drive everybody nuts. I mean, hopefully that doesn't happen, right? But the reality is there's a lot of togetherness. It's not necessarily, a bad thing, right? But at the same time, people can grate on each other's nerves. There was a joke. There's a joke a few months ago. They said, someone was, a guy was quarantined, in his house, and he died. Why did he die? Because he was alone with his wife for 2 weeks. She killed him. Right? Too much togetherness. She took the frying pan, and that was it. But this is a very difficult time. There's a lot of stress. People have financial stress. Their kids are at home. And even if they have a job and they work from home and their kids are home and structure and all that, not everything's open and you can't go out as much and socialize. And it's hard because a lot of these things that we do get us through the day, and we are very sociable creatures. So to be stuck and only be able to speak to, to people over the phone, and you can't even really do that because, people are dealing with their own household and whatever, it could cause a lot of stress. Right, it certainly can cause a lot of stress, right? But but at the same time, so there's a lot of this going on. When you have a lot of this going on, this is going to push a lot of your buttons, right? A lot of negative buttons. Yeah, and then you see where you're really holding, right? Because if your kids are going stir crazy, and they're busy fighting each other or whatever, and they're just and they're bored or whatever, it's a hard thing because you got things to do also. You got things you want to accomplish, but everything is turned on its head, right? So we don't want trials and tribulations. We don't say, okay, God, I've been working on my anger, now test me. You don't want that, right? But that is really the ultimate test. The ultimate test is, okay, I've been working on this, I've been working on that. At the same time, let's see where I'm really holding, right? When a person gets a certain trial or whatever, how angry do they get? Do they scream? Do they lose themselves? Right, anger is a terrible thing. That the Talmud says that a person gets angry, even if Gehenna was right underneath them, he wouldn't change because he's so angry. Like a person just loses himself. I mean, they're different. I guess there are different levels of anger, but when a person, if a person gets to a certain point, you never ever speak to someone when they're angry. You have to wait till the anger assuages. If the anger doesn't assuage, they'll never listen to you. Right. You have to wait till they come down because they're not rational. Yep. Right. They can do tremendously irrational things and think irrational thoughts, but they have to come back to reality. And some people can take longer, some people shorter, right? Whatever it is, but the power of Musar and the power of learning is to be in control at all times.
And know why.
100%. There was something that I saw on this Parsha sheet this week that my Rebbe put out. One of the things someone contacted him and said their faith in God is fractured right now because just everything going on, and this is closed off and that's closed off and you're stuck with this and stuck there and this, all these different things. How do you get through this, right? How do you have the proper emunah, a proper faith in God, while going through this? So he said, I want you to say many times during the day, God is in charge and God runs the world. That's the mantra. You are not, we mentioned before, you 100% are not in control of anything, right? Certainly you can't control your own bowel movement. You're not in control of anything. But he said, if you want a speedy recovery and this type of thing, that's the mantra, right? That God is in charge. And whatever God wants, this is what we want him to take it away, right? We want everything to go, quote unquote, go back to normal. No one else should die, God forbid. Whatever, the economy should come back. All these
Sunday.
You're right. By yesterday, right? But at the end of the day, we have to acknowledge he's the one in charge. And as my Rebbe would say, every missile has their mark, right? So, one of the things we see over here is that, the majority of people, God forbids, that are going to die from this disease are people that are compromised, right? That their health is compromised. But we see that there are younger people, that their health, in perfect health, and they die from it, right? There was somebody in New York, 39 years old, right? A few kids, forget how many kids he had, right? 2 days, perfect health, had no issues, right? So someone would say, well, how do you explain that? I said, it's very simple to explain. God wanted this person out of the world. That's it. Why? Not for me to understand, right? But it's not just a disease that's going to knock out just old people. Those are the majority going to die that are compromised, 100%, right? But God's also making a point. And the point is that this is the reason my Rebbe said many years ago, this is the reason people die young and old. right? First of all, the reason is because if you're going to live to a certain age, King David says, that the average age person going to die, the age is going to get 70 years. If he has more, if he's stronger, he'll get 80 years, right? Anything after that's a blessing, right? But if everyone died the same age, no one would repent, until right before, right?
Exactly.
So Rabbi says that people are going to die young and old to wake up a person, right? However it works, why it's going to take people out of this world when they're younger or whatever, we don't know. Right? The Ramchal in Derech Hashem says many times when he speaks about spiritual forces and how they work and how everything starts from above and it comes down this and down to this world, and God uses them for whatever he wants to use them for to do and whatever. He says, we don't have any idea what this means. I'm just explaining how it works. Right? According to Kabbalah, this is how it works, but we don't see it, we don't fathom it. It's all about the matrix. Right? We can't fathom all this, and it doesn't matter. And and it's not a crock, and it's not a wuss, as I would say, that we would say in Boston, that you say, oh, so you got faith. You got faith. Well, it's more than faith, right? But the bottom line is God is infinite. We're not infinite. God can run through a black hole. We can't do that. God's got the creation of many galaxies, stars, bigger than planets. Right? For whatever reason he's using them. But they have power. They have their own power, right? We only explain like a tip of the iceberg when it comes to the moon, and high tide, right? That there's a definite connection. You see that, there's certain power over there, and however it works, however it's manifested, right? To us, okay, we can explain it in certain terms or whatever, but at the end of the day, there's so much we don't know. Mentioned before, we are an infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust, but you know what? What we do matters. You speak badly against someone, you don't ask them for forgiveness, certainly as a Jew, then whatever you said exists in the world until you erase it. In other words, our angels created when you said something, it doesn't disappear. All the Yom Kippurs in the world, not going to help you. Right? Fasting, beating your chest. If it's between man and God, it's one thing. Right? So you have to have remorse. You have to have regret. You promise you're never going to do it again. Yom Kippur atones. Right? For most things. Right? But if it's between man and God, man and man, nothing helps unless you ask them for forgiveness. And if they don't give you forgiveness, you go again. And you bring people with you, so there'll be a swage. If that doesn't work after the third time, they get the transgression. You don't have to go further than that, right? But obviously, you have to mean it. It has to be real, whatever. And the fact that if someone wronged us, and they come to ask for forgiveness, what are we going to say? We're going to spit on them and say, no way, right? They wronged us. Now, it doesn't mean we have to be best friends with them. But if someone asks us for forgiveness, so the commentaries tell us that we should forgive straight away. Why? That doesn't mean we're a dish rag. Why is that? Because if we look the other way, what someone did to us, then God's going to look the other way what we did against him. Right? Measure for measure. Now, the other thing, which is even harder, right, to put into practice, chovos levavos, duties of the heart, in the gate of bitachon, the gate of belief in God, says the following. He says, anything that happens to us in this world, he says, imagine, now all the PETA activists will be jumping up and down. Imagine a person beat a dog with a stick. Not that I'm advocating, right? A person hit a dog with a stick. Who does the dog go after? The stick, right? It doesn't go after the person wielding the stick. I don't think dogs have got any smarter today than in previous generation. They go after the stick. They don't go after the one wielding the stick. Right now, if someone was texting and they drive and they smash into your car, cause bodily injury, demolish your car and everything else, what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to jump up and down, yell and scream, right? You're going to get their information, you're going to get your car back and whatever. But at the end of the day, you're right. That person's at fault. They're at fault in this world. But who sent them? They're just a messenger. Right? They're sending you a message. They're just a messenger. Right? So Chovos Levavos says. So he says over there, what are we getting so upset about? Right? What did my Rebbe say the mantra is? God runs the world. he wanted this to happen. Now, there are certain things that occur in our lives that we do to ourselves, right? That we can't say, hey, God, why'd you allow this to happen? Because, right? He said, I didn't stop you. There was a story of I'm not going to make fun of the CFL. There was a story I said many years ago of a football player who jumped in the water, American football player, the real NFL, right? Jumped in the water to save somebody. Somebody was drowning. He had the right idea. There's only one problem. He didn't know how to swim. And he drowned. Tragic. It's absolutely tragic. Now, he gets upstairs after 120. The guy was 20 years old, 21 years old. Right? They had the right idea, but there's no reason to put your life in danger if you don't know how to swim. If it's a doubt, you can put your life, whether you're going to put your life in danger is one thing. This guy didn't know how to swim. Never took a life-saving course, nothing. Jumped in the water, first reaction. He didn't know how to swim. So he goes upstairs after 120 years. He says, God, why didn't you save me? He said, you didn't listen to Coffman's class. That was already too long ago. So, that before I started. He said, if you would have listened to his classes, you would have said, how many times did he say there's a 614th commandment? Don't be stupid. No one tells you to jump into the water if you don't know how to swim. Right? You might say, okay, so I'm making light of this. I'm not trying to make light of it. I want people to understand. Certain things we can do to ourselves. There are a lot of things that we are affected by certain things maybe our soul has to go through. But regardless, whatever happens, someone caused us damage. Now, they are going to be liable. They're going to be liable for causing damage. But at the end of the day, even if they're going to be liable, it still had to happen. God is just using them as the stick. So the Torah perspective, now this is very hard. The Torah perspective is that I have to believe with all my soul and with all my heart, God's the one behind this. So what am I jumping up and down and yelling and screaming at the stick? That's the Torah perspective. But when someone damages us, right? When someone damages us and we're jumping up and down, and we've been hurt, right? And we've gone through terrible things or whatever. What happens? We miss the point. We miss the point because that person's going to get dealt with. God will deal with them, right? They'll be liable in this world. They'll be liable in the next, right? But at the end of the day, God's telling you, I wanted this to happen to you. I wanted you to wake up. This is why I did it. Now that's a hard thing to swallow because, what's the first thing a person wants to do? You're going to blame that person. Of course he's to blame. Yeah, he was texting running through a red light. Nothing to talk about. Right? Cosmic damage, bodily damage, car damage, all
whether
these things.
Deliberate or incidental.
Right. 100%. But at the end of the day, God's giving you a message. He wanted you to lose money. He wanted you to have bodily injury. He wants you to wake up. Right? But we're too busy yelling at the stick. We're too busy saying, it's because of this, it's because of that, it's because of the other thing, when the reality is everything's because of me. Right? And nobody wants to take any responsibility because, if someone had their hand caught in a cookie jar, they got 20 reasons why it's okay. And and I got in trouble many years ago in a certain blog because someone committed fraud. And the thing I said was, I think I mentioned this before, and the thing I said was, I'm so glad he admitted he did something wrong. That's all I said. And what did people say? So you're saying that he did a good thing. I never said he did a good thing. I said I'm glad he admitted he did something wrong. So then they got all twisted and all this, and finally they said, okay, we're going to box you in a corner. We want you to explain to us why this person did this. Right? It's an Orthodox Jew, committed fraud, whatever it was. So I said, well, you guys are going to be very disappointed. I said, I'm not going to answer. My answer was, you got to ask this person. Maybe you need the money, maybe this, maybe that. Could be any number of reasons, but it's only conjecture. Why in the world am I going to conjecture about somebody who did something like that? He could have done it for any number of reasons. I have to answer? He's wrong. Right? If he's a Torah Jew, it's 10 times worse. He knows better. Shouldn't have done it. I have to admit what he did. I'm going to have enough trouble answering for myself and all my jokes against the CFL, right? I'm going to have to answer for that, maybe. I might have to answer for that, right? But at the end of the day, each person, we mentioned earlier, each person has to answer for themselves. And it doesn't matter what this person did, the other person did, the third person did. It's all irrelevant. It's all 100% irrelevant. It's what I did. Did I make the most of my life or not? Did I waste time when I shouldn't have or not? Right? So over here, a person, and there are people like this, unfortunately. There'll be a person, who learns Torah, learns a lot of Torah, and he thinks he's better than others. Right? Certainly people around him, better than secular Jews. What makes a Jew different than a non-Jew? What's the main difference? The main difference is we have Torah. Right? We have a lot more mitzvahs to keep.
Ought to know better.
Right? Does that make me any better? The only differentiation is that I'm supposed to keep Torah mitzvahs. Okay, a non-Jew has to keep also whatever they have to keep. But we're held to a higher standard. Right? Does that mean, I'm better because of pedigree? Yes. No, just kidding. Right? Doesn't mean that. It means I have more obligation. Right? Being a chosen nation doesn't mean better. It just means we're more obligated, and you see that we're singled out more than anybody else. No one's asking questions about secular Jews. Right? If there was a secular Jew at this big funeral, you think they would have made such a big thing? Right? And yeah, they might have to a certain extent, but not like this. Not branding, Orthodox Jews, no question about it. Right? So secular Jews can't expect anything. They don't have a Torah. They don't have a guide. They do whatever their heart tells them to do. It's right. It's not right. It doesn't matter. They will do whatever they want to do. Right? They'll justify it. They won't. They don't care. They don't care. So if they do something wrong, right? It's not going to be that big of a deal. Right? Even though, as we said, that, if dog bites man, no story. Man bites dog, that's a story. Right? Why is that? Because you're right. Orthodox Jews know better. If Orthodox Jews know better and they get caught doing something that their Torah says is forbidden, yeah, they're held to a higher standard. And they should be held to a higher standard. Right? But, we're all in it together. So there could be people that make us look bad or make the majority. The majority's not bad. Right? The majority of Orthodox Jews are upholding what the protocol is.
Beautiful. Right?
The majority are. Okay. I've seen people with masks down here, not over their mouths, this, that. Some people more, some people less. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. If the majority of people are doing the right thing, so why should I care about the few schnooks that aren't? Right? I have to, because all Jews are interrelated. Right? Kol Yisrael Arevim Zev was there. We're all responsible one for the other. So it makes everybody look bad. Secular, Jews are Jews, doesn't matter. Secular Jews say they don't represent us. Right? Jews during the Holocaust that were killed, that were secular, they say kill the Orthodox Jews. We're like you. Go to your gymnasiums, we go to your sporting events and do all these things, fought in your wars. And Hitler Yamach Shemov, rot. What did Hitler say? Doesn't matter. You got Jewish blood, you're dead. He didn't distinguish because all the Jews are together. It wasn't just, these Jews did the wrong thing and those Jews didn't. He took everybody collectively. Right? So in this case, the same thing. You say, these people did this. Now, again, if what they did was wrong, so good. So then they made a desecration of God's name. If they did according to protocol, and now they're made to look what they did was wrong, okay. Right? It's not on them, but it still looks bad. Right? It still looks bad. And how careful anybody who's an ambassador to the world, right? Any Orthodox Jew, whether you like it or not, you are an ambassador to the world. So therefore, you got an obligation. You're waiting in line. You don't push. You don't cheat. You don't connive. You don't, fill in the blank. Because you're held to a higher standard. Not just because God said it, and that's it. But you have an obligation to be a light unto the nations. And if you act like a dog, you should be treated like a dog. Right? And there are people that are unscrupulous. There are people that do things that are totally wrong, etc. Make us look bad. And they know better. right? And they know better, and they're crooks and other things and whatever. They give everyone else a bad name. Now you'll tell me that's not fair. I agree, but damn it, even if, what would happen? It's not going to happen. What would happen if the mayor of New York, front page, all the New York papers, the Daily News, if it still exists, New York Times, the Post, and he issues an apology. And he says, you know what? They were really right. I was wrong. Now, normally an apology is done. It's probably like small print. You can't find it, right? It's somewhere like at page 250, if you could find it, somewhere in the comics or who knows what. But let's even say he would put that on the front page. If he would put it on the front page, make a massive apology, is the damage done? Damage is done. Damage is done. Right? How many people now, after seeing that, are going to change their image of Orthodox Jews? Damage is done.
Irreparable.
Yeah. It's irreparable, right? And this just keeps going on and on, right? It just, we're not going to sit there and like lie in the streets. We're not going to trash the countries like the Muslims would do or the blacks would do, right? We certainly hold to a higher standard. I'm not saying everybody would do that, right? In general, but that being the case, we just get trashed all over the place. Because there are a few unscrupulous individuals who make everyone look bad. Now here you're vilifying a whole community, right? A whole community of people. And listen, if they deserve it, 100%. Right? So you're not going to argue that. But if they didn't deserve it, it doesn't matter what's going to happen. And people say, oh, they're the ones spreading the disease. There was a whole thing a while ago. Someone was refused service in an auto shop, right? As an ultra-Orthodox Jew, he said, you guys are spreading the disease, get out, threw him out. Wouldn't take care of his car. Now, a person has to understand an ultra-Orthodox community, we're very social. They're all, how many hundreds of synagogues, people come in contact with each other. If there's a circumcision, if there's a wedding, if there's a people learning, whatever. We're a very social group. Before they knew everything that was going on, isn't it true we'd be more susceptible because we're much more, we're much, a smaller group, but all these people come together at all these different times. I mean, the synagogue right down the street from my house, they have services one after another, right? And, in the afternoon and at night, you can have, 1,000, 2,000 people there, easy, right? During that time.
Yeah,
so
part of their life.
Right. So how can it, if you live in a small community like that, but there are a lot of numbers, it should spread quicker. It's not because we're not holding by the protocol. They know what the protocol was. Right. But now everything got shut down. Fine. Because they're the ones spreading the disease. But if you live in these type of communities, right, and these are the numbers, and we're very social, how can it not happen? I'm not saying it's a good thing that it happened by any stretch, right? But, you have a synagogue of, let's say, 400 people show up on Shabbos, right? On Shabbos, or you have 300 people or whatever, or yeshiva, you have a whole group of people. I would like to say, yeah, we're not responsible for this, and, God's going to protect us or whatever. Hopefully that should be the case, right? But if we're a very social group and we're in these, in these type of situations, it should spread more, God forbid, amongst us. We're not just, 10 people living in a neighborhood. We're like, thousands. Thousands. So, okay, you say they shouldn't be doing that, and there are too many people, and it's too crowded. It's relevant. Those are demographics. These are the demographics. But it doesn't mean we're interested in spreading it, by any stretch. Doesn't mean we're not holding by the protocol. Now, again, back to the same thing. If people aren't holding by the protocol, I agree. I definitely agree that they should be called out, right? But they shouldn't be called out against an entire group, right? It's not an entire group.
No.
It's not an entire group. And if it's a big percentage of them, okay, that's also bad, right? I don't think it's a big percentage. right? Are there? But nobody looks. Nobody looks on the beaches. No one's putting, plastering these people all over the place and saying, "Oh, look, we just had a block party, 40 people, no social distancing, no mask." No one says boo. No one says anything. Doesn't make the front page of any paper,
We do,
right?
we
Because
do, we do see it here, Rabbi, in their news, our local news. Like there were, like weddings have been canceled, all parties all summer. I mean, even here where I am in the Pacific Northwest, I know Washington State had just put a hold on opening up, whereas we've heard, places like Georgia have already opened up. You can go get a haircut now, you can go to the movie
right,
theater. We think it's a little
right,
premature, but you see some relaxing and easing starting to happen. But we understand the Jewish community is probably more definitely communal
mhm,
than others in respect, and
right,
so when it comes to a funeral, yeah, they should be allowed at that easing point to be able to attend. And as we heard from one in the audience tonight, that they were keeping their social distance. But if they had something set up with the police and then the police changed their mind and all of a sudden the public opinion changes, it's terrible. But
yeah.
Rabbi, I do have to get ready for my next show eventually. So we've got about 8 or 10 minutes or so. If you still want to wind it down, I mean,
Yeah, we're still in the middle of the Mishnah here. We're certainly not going to finish it. There's a lot. There's a lot here. One thing we'll just mention, at the end, and we learned from Moshe Rabbeinu that towards the book of Deuteronomy, that the Torah tells us, or actually it's by the sin of Miriam speaking badly in the book of Numbers, badly against her brother, and even if he didn't care or whatever, she's still punished. That the Torah tells us Moshe Rabbeinu is the humblest of all people. Right? Right? He showed absolute humility, more than anybody else. More than anybody else ever created. Right? So that's, that being, that being said, nobody, Jew or non-Jew, should be living in this world with a chip on their shoulder. Doesn't matter, they're doing good things, whatever, and they understand, yeah, God's going to reward them in the next world. It doesn't matter, right? I am here to serve God. That's it, right? I have responsibilities, right? And some of my responsibilities mean how I interact with others. That even if what I'm doing is permitted, but other people are going to look at, now we're not talking about idolatry and other things, right? And how secular people necessarily going to look at things, because we have to do what we need to do, right? But at the end of the day, we have to think of others, and how they're going to react. Now, it may not change, certain things, right? But at the end of the day, we have to have sensitivity, right? Now, sensitivity may say, well, it doesn't say, whatever the case is, let's say it's 100% permitted, but there is a sensitivity issue. So even if it's permitted, it doesn't necessarily mean I should do it, right? Again, it's going to depend what it is. It's going to depend on what the ramifications are. I'll give an example. Here in Israel, there was before Passover, there was a tremendous egg shortage. Right now, it seems that, because one of the main ingredients in everything we eat on Passover, eggs. Right? You need a lot of eggs. Right? We had potatoes. It's only so many things you can do with a potato. But you need eggs. You definitely need eggs. Right? So, when people got wind, there's a shortage. People hoarded eggs. Now, after that, once eggs started coming, or whatever, they started going very quickly, right? Now the places only allowed you to take, maybe 2 cartons maximum, right? Some places only allowed you to take 1, whatever it is, because they wanted to make sure like people would get eggs. Now, what about people who hoarded eggs, right? Obviously, their faith that they're not going to have eggs at all was lacking, okay? But regardless of that, that's something where you're not thinking about anybody else. The only thing you're worried about is what I'm going to cook and what I'm going to do, right? I'm worried about 3 people, me, myself, and I, right? All 3 of us together, right? Totally worried about that, and I don't care about you. Well, what about the fact we don't have eggs? Like we don't have, I know somebody told my wife that, they had a choice. They had like 2 eggs, right? And they said, well, I could either make this or I could make that, right? And there were places around that didn't have eggs, right? So, they had to make a choice. Okay, I'm going to make this, I'm going to make that, there's something else, whatever it is. But what about the conscience of people that say, yeah, I don't care. I have 10, I have 10 things of eggs, and I sent like all my kids to keep getting and getting, before this happened. So we make sure we have eggs. What about other people? What about thinking of other people? Right. And okay, in America, they're talking about a meat shortage, right? Because all the meat plants are shut down, right? Imagine someone walked into a store, a store like bought up like all the meat. There was a person somewhere. The thing went viral of someone who bought all these sanitizing things and other things that was hawking it on eBay or whatever. Eventually, whatever, he ended up returning it, whatever the case was. Yeah, I got a lot of flack for whatever it is. Well, what in the world are you thinking? I mean, okay, that's the American way. Other people suffer. You're gonna make more money, so you're gonna hoard toilet paper, or whatever. Whatever the case is. Where is this? I'm talking a basic thing. Basic thing. Where is sensitivity? Sensitivity, a lot of these things like committee, right? And come from a lack, this lack of sensitivity. Think that I'm God's gift to the world. I don't care about anybody else. Now you're gonna say, wow, this person keeps Torah mitzvahs. They just took 10 crates of eggs. Other people are not going to be able to get because you hoarded eggs. Not that you're selling them for profit. You order them for yourselves because you're afraid there weren't going to be any eggs, right? So in the end, where's the sensitivity to others? So you think that person or people, there are a lot of people like that did not have the sensitivity. They just looked out for themselves, right? We all have what to work on. So I'm not saying I'm better than anyone else or anyone else is better than me or whatever, whatever the case is. But even though it was permitted at that time for them to buy that, maybe they should have thought of others. Maybe instead of thinking of themselves, they should have thought of others. So there's sensitivity that we have to have towards others, which means that even if something's 100% permitted, I have to think of the ramifications of what it could do and how it could affect others. And if I'm only thinking about myself, we're going to see that. If I only, if I'm only for myself, who's going to be for me, right? That's going to be, it's going to be the next mission. We'll get there. Right? If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm not for myself, what am I? If not now, when? Right?
Oh, that's huge.
Right? All right. That's the next mission, right? But you're gonna say, well, I have to look out for myself. Well, that's true, but not necessarily at the expense of someone else, unless it's a question of whose life's in danger, right? Who's to say your blood is redder than anyone else's, right? So, there is a sensitivity issue that we have to have that I think. I think that goes out the window when you're worried you're not going to have eggs, or you're worried about something else. You can say my life comes first, but you have to know when that applies and how it applies, and all that. So that is, I guess, the final message in 7.5 minutes.
Oh, Rabbi, I know I don't, I don't want to push back the next one because I know you folks are sharing in Israel to make this time slot. And I know that my second show, he's staying up awfully late in order to do that. It's the only window that worked for him as well. It's like yourself, your Sunday's so booked. And
Right.
I just hope that we're getting a good crowd and we've had a good group today. The time slot works well for a lot of people in the world. I have personally talked a lot of flack from some Jewish and non-Jewish, Noahide people here in North America saying that I'm infringing on a Sabbath. And I'm looking at this as I'm trying to study Torah, but I'm also trying to share out of Israel exactly what Torah really is, because who knows it better than the rabbis who actually have made Aliyah, and it's their life to be there and be a part of what Hashem has birthed them as a nation to be. And, I've been standing firm and saying, look, these rabbis are wise men of God, and they're, yourself included, and they're willing to share after Shabbat, clear of Shabbat, and moving this a half hour forward. I don't ever want to put you on a time restriction because I enjoy your company. I enjoy the Torah you're sharing, and I enjoy the energy.
But if it's for if it's for non-Jews, what's the difference? They don't have anything. They don't have an obligation to keep the Sabbath anyway. So for them it's fine. If any Jews watching where it's Shabbos, okay, you shouldn't be watching. One of my kids asked me that. So what if Jews are watching? Am I liable if any Jew is watching? That's it's not my fault. If they choose to watch it, that's their choice. But any Jew out there watching shouldn't be watching until after Sabbath their time. It's
Just
for
for
non-Jews. It's
posting
really
the
for
time.
everybody. But okay, this is the best time to do it. So pick
You
your
know,
poison.
yeah. All I can say is that I don't want to give up the moments of learning ethics, especially Pirkei Avos, from a learned rabbi, from Israel, and to me, it's where light should emanate from in this world, and more than that, from Torah. And I'm thankful that you have stepped forward to do this class on this day because when my schedule changed and we shifted from Wednesday to this day, it's the only way. It's the only way we could make it work. And Hashem, I feel clear of heart to spend time with you and take this class. It's awesome. But I do have one drop of bad news. Is next week, next Saturday, I actually have to go to Vancouver to take a test, and because I'm always learning too, Rabbi.
Yeah.
I have to go next week to Vancouver, which for me is a few hours away, and take a course or take a test for a course I've been studying. And then I'm going to have another exam probably in June or July, depending when certain learning centers open. I've been stuck taking this course through UBC. And so I have to take one exam and go. So next week I'll be downtown there with the full mask and gloves on. But it means I have to put this class off for next week. If you're okay with that, if you're not disappointed with me.
Okay, whatever we can do.
Well, Rabbi, then I'm going to wind it down because it's after 1:00. I got about 25 minutes. I got to change over for the next show, but I want to thank you. There's so much in this Mishnah that I think we still haven't got to the end. I mean, having to do with the crown of Torah.
We'll get there. There's a lot to speak about.
Well, until next time, folks, which will probably be in 2 weeks, Hashem willing. Thank you so much, Rabbi Coffman. So till next time, folks, have a wonderful day.